What is it that makes these children walk across the plank? They're not told to do it. They find out for themselves. They try according to their own capabilities, and the more they can do, the more they want to do. But there is also pressure from other children, the pressure of competition. This is even more apparent when we look at them on the log. Some children are much more diffident than others, and they're being pressed by the children at the back. As it turns out, the job isn't quite as difficult as it looks, and in this way they gain confidence. Boys find it harder than girls to discover enough about the things that interest them to carry on imaginative and well-structured play sequences. But here boys are exercising a considerable amount of ingenuity and organization in their play. The children playing with water seem to be simply splashing one another, blowing into tubes, getting wet and so on. But in the process they're also learning. They're learning about concepts of physics which will later be very relevant to them, such as the concept of pressure and the properties of a liquid. They're learning in the context of play, without tears and without being aware of what is taking place. Looking at two little girls sewing, we begin to wonder how great a strain is being felt by the one in blue. Both girls are concentrating, but one is working away quietly within her own competence, and the other is involved with her whole body, getting worked up about it. Up to a point, of course, this is good. She is motivated. She is coping with difficulties, and children have to learn to cope with difficulties. Nevertheless, there may be times when the situation becomes an actual threat, when intervention is necessary. One suspects that a word of encouragement from the teacher would not be out of place. This little girl is probably not gaining much in a cognitive sense, but she is gaining emotional reassurance, a sense of confidence in her feminine role through identification with her mother. How important is this sort of practical work? Is it similar to what we've just seen with children making papier-mâché models, or is there more to it than this? Are the children simply learning manipulative skills in a mathematical context, or are they learning the mathematical relations themselves? We suspect the latter. After all, how easy is it for a child to extract the properties of three-dimensional figures, to appreciate the distinction between faces and edges and corners? By actually building these models, the children gain a much clearer appreciation of these relations, and equally important, in the process, the experience becomes fixed. It is more vivid and more memorable than merely looking at models or hearing about them. These children are playing with animals and nursing them. Up to a point, they're compensating for their own roles as children by taking on the role of parents and by nurturing these small, defenseless creatures. They are treating the animals almost as if they were human. But in the process of handling them and watching them and listening to them, they're also learning something about the ways in which the behavior of these creatures is different from that of human beings. They learn what they can do and what they cannot do. Their feeling for animals helps them because it involves their whole attention, and so their emotional involvement feeds their intellectual curiosity. These animal models are some of the most remarkable things in the film. Bearing in mind that they are the work of 7- and 8-year-old children, they achieve a very high standard indeed. The lifelikeness and accuracy of these structures, their proportionality, the faithful reproduction of details are quite remarkable. It is impossible not to appreciate the extent to which the actual experience of handling and observing the creatures has helped the children to achieve this level of excellence. This last sequence illustrates experiments with light. Now we suspect here that the experience as learning would gain a lot by the imposition of a greater amount of structure. It is not enough, after all, simply to give children materials and expect them to find out for themselves about nature, or to find out for themselves valid laws of science. What we can do as teachers is to create more structured situations, so economizing in the amount of effort the children must expend in order to find out. Supplying the materials is one step towards it, but we must also create situations in which they are both interested and in which learning takes place. We must teach them how to look, how to experiment. Perhaps this is just an introductory stage, and in time the teacher will give them a greater degree of guidance.